All right, today we're going to demo how to collect information via Microsoft Form, and then using Power Automate, take that data that's been collected and bring it over to different apps and services within Office 365. So I kind of already described it there, but I want to start by just describing what Power Automate is. It's a service that helps you create automated workflows between various apps and services. And it's part of the Office 365 license that we have for all university faculty and staff. It is not something extra that you need to request. If you're faculty or staff, you can access it and start creating flows today. So I'll start by opening my current browser of choice, Microsoft Edge. Everything that I demo today is going to be done in a web browser. And so my starting point is going to be MavMail on the web. I know a lot of people access their mail through the Outlook application and maybe not via the web. So I just want to demo quick how to get to MavMail on the web. So I can go to mnsu.edu/365. And there it will give me a link to log into my Microsoft 365 account. And once I do, it opens my Outlook on the web. And for today's demo, I'm going to be using a demo user account. So this isn't my personal email account. This is MNSU IT demo user. And from here, the next thing I want to show is the form that I've already created. So I won't go through the process of creating a form since today we're focusing on Power Automate, but I'll show you what a form looks like. You probably interacted with one if you haven't created one yourself. They're really easy. They're also part of Office 365, and I can show you at least how to get there, but I won't go through the creation of a form at this time. But here's the form I created. So I just created a simple form called Weekend Event Sign Up. My first field is your first name, your last name is second, which day you'll be attending, are you willing to work one of the stations, what is your phone number, and what are you most looking forward to at our event. So here's the 6 pieces of data that I'm collecting from people using the form. So I'm going to go back to my Outlook on the web mail just to show you how you can access both creating forms and Power Automate. So to do that, in the upper left-hand corner of my MavMail, there's a button here called the App Launcher. If I click on that, it shows me a select number of apps that are available to me. If I don't see either Forms or Power Automate, I can click all apps and it will show me the full list of apps available by our license. So here, like I mentioned before, if you wanted to create forms, you could locate forms and start by creating your form. But since today we're focusing on Power Automate, I'll select that. Once I select Power Automate, it starts me on the home screen, but where I'm going to be building my flows would be typically in the Create option. And for those that didn't attend our session last week, I'll just quick give a reminder of the different triggers that can be used to start a flow. So these are automated processes, steps that you define ahead of time that will happen anytime an action happens or anytime a trigger happens. And the triggers that are available are automated cloud flow, which means anytime one event within Office 365 happens, another set of steps happens. Another option is instant cloud flow. So this is anytime you tell it to run, then it will go. And a third trigger is scheduled cloud flow. So you could have a flow run every day at 8 a.m., for example. I got really lucky. The demo I wanted to give today, there's a perfect template to demonstrate it. So I'm going to actually, instead of going with Create, I'm going to go to Templates. And the type of flow that I'm using or that I'm working to achieve today is about data collection. So I'm going to go to my Data Collection tab. And here's the flow that I want to use as my template. It's going to track Microsoft Forms response in Excel and notify through Teams and email. So I just like this example because it starts with a form, which is what we're talking about. And it's going to take the information and pipe it to another common place to store data in Excel and post it to a team and an email. So these are all common places where people like to get the information that they collect. So I'll just click on that. And it will take me to my setup page. And the first thing it will do is kind of describe what's going to happen. And it will down here, it will down at the bottom of my screen here, it says this flow will connect to Excel Online Business, Microsoft Forms, Microsoft Teams, and Office 365 Outlook. So this is just confirming that this flow has permission to access these services on behalf of my account. And so I'll click continue. So we talked about the triggering event. The trigger event for this flow is when a new response is submitted. And it doesn't know which form I'm talking about yet. So the first step is I have to tell it which form I want to monitor for responses. So if I hit my drop-down option here, it will show me all the forms that I've created or have access to, and then I can select that. So right now in this demo user account, I only have the one form, so this is really easy. I'll select weekend event sign up. That's the name of my form that I'm demoing. Okay, so anytime a form is submitted from weekend event sign up, it's going to do these steps. So the first step is, because I want to take data from this form, I want first to gather that information. I want Power Automate to gather that information for me so that it can then do stuff with it. So I'm going to get response details from the same form that triggered it. I want to get the details from that form, and the response ID, because I used a template, it knew that the response was going to come from that first step. So it kind of had that filled in already for me. All right, so just to reiterate, when someone submits a form, gather all the information that's from that form. And then the next step that's going to happen is it's going to add a row into a table. And so a little bit more prep work that I did, I created an Excel workbook on my OneDrive account. And in that workbook, I created this table. So I have a column for submitted, for first name, for last name, for which day, the question about workstation, and a phone number. And within an Excel workbook, you can have lots of tables. So I'm just going to confirm my table name for this table is table 1. So I didn't change the name of that. That's just the default. All right, so then when I go back to my Power Automate, when a form is submitted, I'm going to get all that information from that form. And within OneDrive for Business, I'm going to select OneDrive for Business and then OneDrive. And there's a reason for that. If the location I chose there was either a SharePoint site or a team site, you can have multiple document libraries in those. But when it comes to OneDrive for Business, the only option is OneDrive. So I choose OneDrive for Business and then OneDrive. And then over here on the file row, there's a file icon, and I'm going to select that. And this will show me all the files that are in my OneDrive for Business account. It shows me all the folders that are available there and all the files. So I have an Excel file named Team Groups. That was from our previous demonstration, but this one I want to use the Weekend Events Excel file. And once I select that, it will figure out which tables I all have in this. And I only have the one table, so when I hit this drop down, I should just see table 1. All right, after I selected table 1, it will figure out which columns I have in table 1. So if I go back to my Excel spreadsheet, we went over which columns I have. It figured that out and shows that for submitted, I have a spot that I can put information, first name, last name. Okay. So to fill this in, then I'm going to put my cursor in the submitted box. And what I want this to submit is, or what I want this to be is the submission time. So I just want to know what time the form was submitted at. For the first name field, I'll select the answer to the first name. For the last name field, so you see when I put my cursor in here, it gives me the option to either select dynamic content or expression. Well, I'm just using dynamic content from these previous steps. So I'm just going through and picking the questions that are part of that form. So here's my last name. Which day? That was one of the questions on the form. And there's the question, and so it will put the answers in that spot. Whether or not they're willing to work at a workstation. There's that one. And I want their phone number. Okay. So now when a form is submitted, it's going to gather up all that information and it's going to post it into my Excel document. The next thing I want to happen is I want it to post a message as the Flowbot to a channel. So if you're a Microsoft Teams user, you might have a team and you want multiple people keeping track of who's submitting this form. This is just an example of why you might want to do it this way. So the team that I have access to as MNSU IT demo user is a test for IT strategic ops team. The channel I want to post in is just, I want to post right to the general channel. And now I get to craft the message that it posts. So I could just keep it easy and say, we have a new form submission. But I actually want to just take that information instead of having to go look at it somewhere else, just post it right in the team. So I'll say we have a new form submission that was submitted on. And I'm going to go down here to the get response details action and choose submission time because it was submitted on this time. And I'll say by first name, I'll put a space, and then last name. And then I'm going to just line down here a little bit and give the other answers that I have. So the other information, I already have first name, last name submitted. Oh yeah, which day? So I'll just give a spot for that. Oops, that was an accidental click. And I'll enter down and we'll go with workstation. And phone number. So all that information that this flow has gathered up for us, it's going to post into this team message. And optionally, I can add a headline here. When I'm posting to Teams channels, I usually don't need that. So I'm just going to leave that blank. All right. Another location where people might want to get the information is in their email. So the next step of this flow, put it into an Excel table, posted it to a team, and lastly, I'm going to have it send an email. So as I said earlier, the account, well, just a quick demo of this to field. This will actually search the MnState address book for users. So anyone that has an account within MnState. So for example, if I wanted this to go to Lexi, I can enter her name and it will search and it will find both of her accounts. Lexi has a student and a staff account. So I could select Lexi here and then it would send the email to her. For this demonstration, I'm going to send it to myself, MNSU IT demo user. And the subject will just be new form submission. And down in the body, I can do the same thing that I did with this message up here. New, and I'll be a little faster this time, new form submitted by first name, space, last name. And all the same fields that I used before, which day, workstation. I think I'm just having a scrolling issue here that I'm not getting low enough of my. So I'll search for it. So let me search for workstation and that will help it show it. I think I'm just having an issue where I can't scroll further while sharing my screen. And what was the other one I wanted to demo? Oh, phone number. So I'll search the word phone. I can bring that up. And I wanted the submission time. Okay, so new form submitted on submission time by first name, last name, which day, workstation, and phone number. And I think I forgot to include. There we go. All right, so there we have it. One form is submitted. These three actions are going to take place. So I'll click save. And right away when I click save, Flow is going to kind of run through and check, or Power Automate is going to run through and check this flow to make sure I don't have any mistakes. And if I do, it will just alert me and tell me what the problem is. It doesn't look like I have any problems here. So I'm going to go ahead and back out of this flow. And when I do, it says your flow is ready to go and it's already turned on. So as of now, this flow is actively running. So if I should get someone to submit our form, we'll see all those actions take place. So I'm looking at the screen for my flow. Right now it says in my 28-day run history, I don't have any submissions yet, but that's because I loaded this before Lexi submitted. So I bet you if I hit this refresh button, we will see the flow show up, so that it keeps a 28-day run history of when this flow ran, tells me the date and time. So how long ago? That was 31 seconds ago. It took it 5 seconds to run, and the status is that it succeeded. So it didn't have any errors along the way of doing all the steps that I told it to do. And to confirm that, I'll pop open my Teams. And we see here in the general channel of the team, we have a post that says we have a new form submission that was submitted on February 28, 2023. And the time is weird here. I'll get to that next. By Lexi Potter. It says which day, Saturday, workstation, yes, and her phone number. And then it lets me know why this flow came in. So in case someone is curious, someone that's part of this team is curious who posted this, it just gives a little information that this was posted by a flow owned by MNSU IT demo user. All right, so that was one of the steps. One of the steps was my Excel file. So let me go over to my Excel file and we'll see that I have my submitted date and time. I have Lexi's name, which day, workstation, and phone number, all posted right there within my Excel workbook. And if I go over to my email, we'll see I got my email with all the same information. All right, and if I want to see each step as they went, I can go into the flow. So let's say this did have a failure. I could then open up my flow and see where the failure happened and try to fix that. So each step it will check off as it goes, and it gives me a green check mark if it succeeded. And if there was a failure along the way here, it would give me a red X, and it would tell me why it failed, and then I can try to fix that for future runs. Now, there was one thing I pointed out that you might have noticed. The time is really weird. Lexi submitted this at 11:45-ish, not 17:48. And the reason for that is that by default, Flow uses UTC, which is Coordinated Universal Time. And so I'm just going to add a little step. I'm going to tune up my flow a little bit so that that shows Central Time rather than UTC. So I'm going to open my flow back up here and click Edit. And I'm going to add a step here towards the beginning because I use that time field in all three of these steps. I want this step to happen first. And the step that I'm going to have is convert time zone. And I know the name of that, so I'm going to search for it. If you don't know the name of it, you can kind of play around and figure out. And if you ever need help, of course, you can reach out to IT and we'll help you find what it is you're looking for. But this is what I'm familiar with, convert time zone. I'm going to select that. The time that I want to convert is the submission time from this previous step. The source time zone, like I said, by default, it uses UTC. So I'll go to find the coordinated universal time. That's the source. And what I want it to convert to is our time zone. And I think I went right by it. Central time for US and Canada. And then I can also say how I like the time, how I want it, presented when it posts. So by default, it used this, use the date, and then the time. It looks like it's using the 24-hour clock. So I can choose here. Then the benefit of this is that I can choose my preferred format for the date and time. So I like the universal full date time pattern. So I'll select that, and then I'll click. Oh, now I need to go through and replace that submission time. Instead of using the data that's collected from forms, I want it to use my convert time zone, my converted time zone step. So I'm going to go back through here and just take that data out and put this data in. Oh. Make sure my cursor's in the right spot there. And then go down and select converted time and save. Now I don't need Lexi to resubmit the data now that I've changed the step. Now that I have a run a test run, and when you create a flow, I recommend doing a test run yourself first before you put out there live. Once you have a test run, then you have test data that you can work with. So now I can go up here in the upper right-hand corner and use the test button and choose automatically with a recently used trigger. And I'll just select that same action that happened and click test. And now it will use that same data that triggered the flow before, and it will rerun the flow. So then I can see what changed and how it worked. And what's cool when you do the test, it just shows you as it checks off each step. So now if I go to my Excel table, I can see that my date and time now gives me the correct time. Lexi submitted it at 11:48 and in the format that I prefer. And I could go and delete this one since I prefer this updated format. And since I ran that test, it did all the steps. So if I go to my email, I see that all the information is submitted and with the correct date and time. And what was the other place? Teams was the other one. If I go to my Teams channel and refresh that, we'll see that it also reposted that information there. So that is a demo of how to collect data with Microsoft Forms and using Power Automate, pipe it to different locations or different apps and services within Office 365.